Hello, everyone. I'm really excited for our interview today. I want to welcome Tracy Hali. She's going to be speaking with me today for our Beyond the Board interviews. Tracy, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and how you got started in the industry?
Absolutely. And thanks, Suzanne. I'm happy to be here today to talk with you. My name's Tracy Hali. I'm the Vice President of Sales Operations at Intelisys. I am born and raised in New Jersey, where I live with my husband, Todd, and our 3 children, our chocolate lab, Bear, and our guinea pig, Noelle. And I graduated from the University of Rhode Island, and I was a communication studies major. So I had a lot of public speaking classes. And like so many graduates, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So senior year, I printed out some resumes. I put on my suit because it was the 90s. And I went to a career fair that URI was hosting. And I started going around to the different tables and talking with many different people. And All Net Communications was there. And they wanted to interview me for a sales job. And I honestly wasn't sure that I was going to be any good at that. But after speaking with them, they liked me and they really wanted me to work in their Rhode Island office. Of course, I was a college kid, so I didn't have any money. And so I was planning to move back to home with my parents in New Jersey at the time. And I did go in for an interview in the New Jersey office. And when I walked in, I found that it was an office of all men, salespeople, except there was one saleswoman who also happened to be the top sales producer there in that office. And so, of course, that's who they paired me up with for my ride out, because I remember we used to do ride outs back then. And we had a great day. Like, she took me out to customers. I got to really see firsthand. And I honestly, at that time, thought, like, if she can do this, then I can totally do this. And they offered me the job and I took it. And that was actually almost 30 years ago. And I knew the universe was really pulling me toward that job because that's actually where I met my husband. And this year we're married for 24 years. So
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Fellow Jersey girl, I love it. So, working in the tech industry, what are your best tips for our members in navigating our ever-changing climate?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, back when I started, as you can imagine, it was a completely different industry. And I know I'm going to age myself here, but I actually had a pitch book and I carried my order forms in a briefcase. And so we used to do this thing called 5 after 5, which is where you would actually do 5 cold calls after 5 p.m. to try to get someone to sign off for a sale. And I remember the first time that someone sold a T1, because we weren't selling T1s back there, and it was probably $2,000. But we were like, man, like really looked up to that person as like a rock star in the office. But there was this one woman who was the director of support at the time, and she really took a liking to me, and she wanted me on her team so bad, and she wanted me to actually manage teams for her. And I did not know if I was going to be good at that. I mean, I was really starting out, and I was just trying to figure out how to manage myself, let alone try to figure out how to manage other people. But she was really persuasive, and so I agreed to work for her. And mainly it was because she believed in me, and she thought that I could do it. And I was young. I was literally 3 years out of college. So I started by managing one team in New Jersey, and then pretty soon I had the entire East Coast. I started traveling, and I really found my passion there. So if I can think about a couple of tips, I would say, number one, have a continuous pursuit of learning. I moved into various different roles, trying new things, because for me, doing the same thing over and over can really get stale. But you can stay in the same role, but it is great to really have new things to do. So if you're in the same role, it would be more like stretch projects or cross-functionally working with different departments. That kind of stuff really keeps you thinking, learning, and growing. And then number 2, I'd probably say collaboration. I love to travel to different offices to be in front of people. So that was, at the time, like just trying to learn what they do, how do they fit into the company. And back then I wasn't even traveling for events yet. So like the whole networking piece really would come much later in my career, but I just really wanted to it was kind of like a sponge soaking everything in. Another really big one, I would say, Suzanne, is you have to be able to just deal with the change, right? Like, we're in the tech industry. Change happens all day, every day. And if you just look at some things in the news, I mean, there's consolidation in our industry. There's layoffs all the time in our industry. I've been doing this for a long time enough to just expect that. And honestly, like, you can't control any of it. So it's don't really put all of that energy toward trying to worry about it, is kind of what I've realized over the years. But what you need to think about is, what can you do when it happens and how do you adapt? So like, if you think about my career, I started with AllNet, and AllNet just 3 short months later quickly became Frontier Communications because we were bought. And then we were bought by Global Crossing. And with that, you can imagine through many acquisitions, there were different leadership teams. These leadership teams had their own ideas, and there would be changes all the time. Fast forward several years later, and Global Crossing actually filed bankruptcy, which I had never gone through before. So my support teams were in save mode. They could do whatever you could to keep the customers. And it was a really scary time. And I actually remember being told that I would have to let go either one of my team members so that I could take their role so that I wouldn't lose my job. And I did that. And I remember crying because I felt so guilty. And that was so hard to do to that person. But I did it. And I think I'm more resilient because of that. And I learned a couple life lessons because of that. And then last, I'd probably say, like, it's never a good time, right? It's never a good time to buy a house. It's never a good time to do, make a big purchase. I mean, it's just, right? We always think like, oh, I'll get to it at some point. When I look back at my career at Global Crossing, I stayed there for 16 years on the direct side. And those last few years, I just didn't love it anymore at all. But I did love my team. So I stayed there because that was the easy thing for me to do. And then I remember coming in one day, something happened and I got so upset and I actually resigned on the spot out of the blue, which was really uncharacteristic for me to do something as drastic as that. But I remember driving home feeling the weight of the world was literally lifted off my shoulders. And I was thinking, why didn't I do that sooner? Yeah. Like, leaving Global Crossing at that time felt like a huge shift in my career. And that was all that I ever knew, right? Because I started right out of college. So I called my friend like a couple days later and I wanted to tell her, hey, I finally left. And she said, you know what? Like, I have a job for you, managing an indirect team. And I was like, what the heck is that? Like, I was in the direct world for 16 years. So she's like, oh, you'll be fine. It's what you do, but it's better. You're going to be great at it. And little did I know that, like, that really allowed me to finally find like the next phase of what my career was going to be in the indirect channel.
That's awesome. And I think that you really hit on a lot of things that a lot of our members can really relate to, and making some of these tough decisions that we have to at times in our career. So how did you originally get involved with ACW? And can you tell us a little bit about your experience in working with our committees?
Sure. So I got into the direct world, right, with XO. That was my first taste of that. And I did love it. It was amazing. I started traveling at that time then to industry events. And I saw that Alliance of Channel Women, they had the Live Connect events. They were promoting at all of those types of channel partner shows. And so I feel like I always had a calling to leadership. Like, even if I think back in high school, like, I was really involved. And then when I went to college, I wound up being my sorority president. And I found that I really liked the idea of being a part of something bigger, like that camaraderie. Yeah. So I attended one of the ACW events and I just loved it. There were so many women there together in one room. I really resonated with the speakers that were on stage, the content that they shared, their experiences and stories, and the camaraderie of just sitting at the table with a bunch of strangers and feeling like, we were fast friends. And so I really liked it. I joined ACW. That was about 2016. So almost 10 years ago, not 9 years ago. But you know what? That was the extent of it at the time. I felt like I was so busy with my career that I just really couldn't get more involved. But I would always join the live events when I could, when I would go to those types of industry events. And then, almost 5 years ago, I joined Intelisys. And after 1 year being here, I found myself in a vice president role leading an organization of 100 people. And around that same time, I talk about like imposter syndrome, right? I mean, I was feeling it big time. But around that time, I had heard a speaker talking about building your brand. And I started thinking like, wow, like, what do I want to put out there? what kind of leader do I want to emulate? How can I use my experiences? And so I updated my LinkedIn. I started posting more. I was looking at other people's postings, liking, commenting, sharing that stuff. And I really looked to ACW to see how I could get more involved at that point. I didn't have many mentors throughout my career. Like, again, I started with all men. I mean, I had a few mentors, men and women, but nothing really that was very consistent or too memorable, unfortunately. So I thought that, mentoring, joining that committee might be a good start for me. But I knew that I kind of felt like I would be a good mentor, but I wanted to join first as a mentee just to see what it was all about, and which I would highly recommend, right? I think we make sure that that's a mandatory thing that we have people do. But I learned a lot. I was able to contribute. I met some great people. I felt like I could draw from my experiences in that group. And that lasted several months. And then when that circle ended, I was asked by ACW to run my own circle because they had liked, my contributions. And I thought, wow, that's crazy. I'm going to have my own circle. I don't know what to do. But I was given 10 women in my group. And honestly, ACW does a fantastic job of preparing you with the content. So you basically get a package. It's what articles you should read, what videos you should watch. And it's very important to do the pre-work so that, you can make sure you have meaningful discussions. So I was the facilitator of that group, but I had learned so much from each of those women. Like, I didn't think that I was going to get as much out of it as I did. And we created a bond. And so, after that mentor circle was over, we actually still have monthly catch-up calls in the calendar that if, we want to just catch up, say, hey, how are things going, bounce ideas off each other, ask advice. And it's literally brought us close together.
I love that.
It's mentoring has been, I would definitely recommend it. It's been amazing. And just so you feel like you have, a safe space to talk and share your ideas and get advice, honestly. But I also recently started working with the membership committee too. And Erin does a fabulous job. She onboards all of our new members, and it really sets them up for successfully using ACW to its fullest and all of the member benefits that we have. So those two committees they're awesome.
Well, it's such a huge accomplishment being elected as a board member. And I think at times, from the perspective of members that haven't gotten involved, it can just seem a little bit intimidating. So what would your best advice be to someone who is thinking about getting a little bit more involved, but maybe is feeling a bit intimidated?
Yeah. Well, honestly, only you know when it's a good time to get involved. No one else can tell you that. And remember, we all have our day jobs, right? We've got responsibilities, and that's where our paycheck comes from. So that's our priority, first and foremost. So if you're already feeling overwhelmed in your current role, then it's probably not a good time to volunteer your time. And I kind of think of it like this, like my kids have always played multiple sports, but there comes a time when I look back and set the rule, and I was like, okay, you guys, one sport per season. Like I can't handle it. I can't deal. Yeah. So for example, like my son, if he wants to play lacrosse and he wants to play baseball in the spring, one team is always going to be let down. So if you have a lacrosse game, then you can't be there for your baseball team, and they're going to be let down because they're going to need you.
Right.
And vice versa, and I feel like it's just not fair to those members. And I think of it the same way in business. You're either letting yourself down because you're taking on way too much and you just can't handle it, or you're going to be letting somebody else down. So with all that said, there is going to come a time when you feel that you can totally contribute. Like, I got this, I got a good handle on what I'm doing, and I'm ready. And that's where you can look to ACW. And you don't have to run a committee, be a chair off the bat, but you can start out by just joining as a member of that committee and getting involved that way. And I would say, like, one of the biggest sayings that I always say is timing is everything, because I mean, this has reigned true throughout my entire career, right? I never planned to run for the board. And a good friend of mine said, you should run for the board. And I was like, you're crazy. And she's like, run for the board. So I was like, okay. I was reluctant at first, but I filled out the application and I submitted it. And then I wasn't chosen, nothing. And I was like, okay, cool. It wasn't my time. That's fine. I have plenty of other things to do. No big deal. Then at the end of last year, it came up again for the board. And so I applied again. And I already felt a little bit more confident because I had already filled out the application once, kind of knew where I was coming from. And then this time I was chosen for the top 10. But when I looked at that list of those other 9 ladies that were running with me, I was like, oh my God, they were all rock stars. Any one of them would have been amazing. And there was only 5 spots that were open. So I was like, okay, again, this is open to the universe. Like, people have to vote for me. If they think I'm going to be good for it, then they'll vote for me. And they did. And so I got one of the 5 spots, and which was super exciting. And it's been an amazing journey so far. I'm working with a great group of ladies.
Well, really lucky to have you to work with everybody here too.
Thank you.
So one last question for you. If someone is new to ACW, where do you think would be a great start to getting more involved?
Yeah, absolutely. Check out the website. There's all the information on there. It has all of the committee details, past events. There's also a lot of local ACW chapters. So chances are there might be one in your area where you could get together locally with a bunch of ladies. I would also suggest following ACW on LinkedIn and all the social outlets, because we post a lot and there's tons of content. Just being in the know, there's a lot of webinars and videos and trainings and speakers and all that good stuff. So you can start there. And most definitely, if you're at Channel Partners, attend a live event. I can't explain how amazing these live events are. We just did one when we were in Las Vegas, and it was an 80s theme. We try to do a fun theme sometimes. We just got such great feedback. Again, the camaraderie that's shared and the friendships that are made while you're there. There's nothing like it. So, and then of course, we're very, like myself personally, I'm very active on LinkedIn. Anybody can feel free to reach out to me. I have plenty of people that reach out to say, hey, I'm a new member, can I meet you, whatever. And everyone is really, really just accommodating and wants to help. I've never met someone at an ACW event where I've thought, oh, I don't want to be around that person.
Yeah.
They're not, never. And it's been, what I say, like 9 years, right? So it's people supporting people, because there's men that are members too.
Yeah.
So it's women and it's men supporting the greater good for women in the channel, which is fantastic.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great interviewing you, and we appreciate it. And thank you again for your service to ACW. It's been great talking to you today.
Oh, it's been great talking to you too, Suzanne. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.